Welcome to the RNL Revolution Nothing Less Show. This is episode number 62. Today is July 22nd, 2021. My name is Andy Z. I'm the host of the show, and I'm coming to you from Los Angeles, California. We mean what the name of our show says: revolution, nothing less. This is what the planet we live on needs. What humanity, if it is to survive, needs. What the youth of all nationalities for whom this system has no future need. What Black and Latino youth who were dogged, if not murdered, by the police, who are locked in prisons and jails by the millions, whose lives are too often reduced to killing each other over what amounts to a pitiful piece of turf, need. And what those not in the life, but who seek safety behind apartment doors or in homes with windows barred like a kind of prison, what they need. What women who should be able to live as full human beings, free from the threat and the reality of sexual abuse and even rape, and the basic right to control their lives and reproduction, need. What trans and all LGBTQ people who are under assault from fascist thugs and fascist politicians who want to come back into power need. What students who spend 20 years of schooling only to end up deep in debt with atomized jobs, lobotomized, producing trivial pursuits need. What those who are able to work in healthcare and teaching only to be thrown up against the brutal wall of this profit system and the political setup that thwarts their desire to heal and to teach. A bitter reality that burns a deep wound in their soul. What they need. What all of us need. What humanity needs is revolution, nothing less. People want change. People in their millions don't want to live like this. But up against recognizing and getting with revolution, nothing less, for a radically different and far better world, looms something else, the terrible present. This sits in the back of your mind and it pushes to the front sometimes at night and sometimes when you least expect it. And it fills you with fear or dread of the morrow. A fear of the future and a burying of hope that causes you to turn away from the reality that stalks humanity, making you feel that all you can do, all that you should do is take care of you, to protect your little corner in a shooting gallery of rivals, whether on the internet or to protect your little corner in a deadly neighborhood warfare. But we can't hide from the fires that burn and now smother much of this country with smoke. From the water running dry, from the rising seas, and most of all from the great conflicts among the rulers that roil this land and the world. To see this potential, to pierce through the fog of what is, requires the most scientific approach to the reality we face. The Revcoms statement, a declaration, a call to get organized now for a real revolution says, quote, "This system is in real trouble, caught up in crisis and conflicts for which it has no easy or lasting solutions. Throughout this country, the workings of this system have given rise to deep divisions which cannot be resolved under this system. Society is being ripped apart. Those who rule are locked in a bitter fight amongst themselves, and they cannot hold things together in the way they have in the past. Although there are a lot of bad things connected with this, and it could lead to something really terrible, it is also possible that we could wrench something really positive out of it. Revolution, to put an end to this system and bring something much better into being." A declaration, a call says revolutions are not possible all the time, but are generally possible only in rare times and circumstances, especially in a powerful country like this. And it says, this is one of those rare times and circumstances. This statement is as bold and as shocking to people who have not thought of revolution, not thought it's possible for decades. Caught up and confined as they are in the world as it is on the surface today. And we have said these words for a few months on the RNL Revolution Nothing Less show, and we have worked to bring them to life. But now, Bob Avakian, the revolutionary leader and author of The New Communism, has written a major piece, a companion to a declaration, a call, a lifeline of clarity titled, "This is a rare time when revolution becomes possible. Why that is so, and how to seize on this rare opportunity." This is a work that makes the case, develops the argument for why this moment in history that we are living in right now could be ripened into a revolutionary crisis, a situation where a real revolution for a far better world could be launched and won. This is an article that deepens of our understanding of how that is so, and how we should go to work right now to prepare people, how to organize the forces today to seize the time to actually make a real revolution and drive this people-killing and soul-crushing system off the face of the earth, and go to work and build a radically new society where all of humanity could flourish. Bob Avakian cuts deep to the root of the problem. He dissects the political situation. He stretches our sights wide to encompass the broad potential among many different kinds of people for this revolution. Having illuminated how this is so and what needs to be done to make this real, Bob Avakian concludes this piece with this, quote, "There is the basis to seize on this rare possibility to make revolution. Even in a powerful country like this, there can be a real chance to win. If among growing numbers of people who cannot stand to live any longer under this people-killing and spirit-suffocating system, there is the scientifically grounded understanding, determination, and daring to make this a reality," end quote. Over the last few weeks, in key battleground states where the Republican fascists have a majority in the state legislatures, they've passed measure after measure restricting the right of black and brown people to vote. And more than that, they've created new rules that would enable this fascist Republican Party to overturn an election that they don't like the results of. This is a different form of rule. At the same time, over the last few weeks, some in the Democratic Party have voiced seemingly strong objection to this, with Biden intoning, "Have you no shame?" to people who have no shame. Democrats have been making speeches saying this is a revival of Jim Crow to a Republican fascist movement and party who have spent the last 50 years trying to do just that. Appeals to the consciences of people who have none, with Biden trying to, quote, "reach across the aisle," end quote, and find common ground with fascists, an approach that Bob Avakian has said will fail miserably in his New Year's statement. In this new piece, Bob Avakian cuts to the heart of the situation with this, and I quote, "These divisions among the ruling powers and in the larger society cannot be resolved within the framework that has existed and has held things together for nearly 150 years since shortly after the end of the Civil War, which led to the abolition of slavery. They cannot be resolved on the basis of the capitalist democracy that has been the normal means of capitalist rule, which has been a dictatorship for so long," end quote. I repeat, these divisions cannot be resolved within the normal framework that has existed for 150 years. Think about that. And don't turn away out of fear or because you don't wish it to be true or because it challenges your cherished assumptions and beliefs. Bob Avakian makes the case for why there is the possibility of making revolution in this moment, in "This is a rare time when revolution becomes possible." But revolution will not just happen. There's work to do. For the situation that makes revolution possible to become a reality, all who see the need for this need to, as the declaration, a call says, quote, "urgently change the situation where not nearly enough people know about this revolution and are with it. We need to get this revolution and its leadership known everywhere. We need to challenge and seriously struggle with people right around us and all around the country to do something that, yes, it requires real heart and will make a positive difference for real. For these people to become a part of this revolution and follow this revolutionary leadership. We need to organize more and more people into the ranks of the revolution. And that means getting a declaration, a call out everywhere, and getting Bob Avakian's new article, "This is a Rare Time When Revolution Becomes Possible," why that is so, and how to seize on this rare opportunity to get these both out everywhere. It means fighting hard for this, changing ourselves, changing the world, and changing people. Bob Avakian says that everyone who recognizes the profound need for revolution needs to wage a tireless and at times fierce struggle to win more and more people to make a radical rupture with the confining and degrading terms of this system, and to take up and act on the revolutionary orientation and motivation that is put forward in a declaration and call. He says, quote, "Instead of staying in your lane and going for self, while this system is moving to even more decisively crush any hope for a world worth living in, people need to be looking at the bigger picture, focusing on the greater interests of humanity and the possibility for a far better world, and then acting to make this a reality." So where to begin? Number one, with a declaration, a call. And it says, begin by getting together and grappling with why an actual revolution is necessary, what such a revolution involves, and what kind of society this is aiming for. This will enable people who are new to the revolution to themselves become organizers for the revolution and to recruit more and more people to do the same. Number two, this weekend, if you are in Los Angeles or in New York City, there are mass Revolution Club meetings where people who see the need for real change will discuss these very questions, and they'll make plans. Number three, go online and read and download it if you can. "This is a Rare Time When Revolution Becomes Possible" by Bob Avakian, and start digging into it. Here, I've just touched on its depth and scope. BA presents a sharp analysis of the system we live under and why it's not reformable, how it has given rise to the current acute situation. He paints a vivid picture of how we could act to hasten this revolution, and he takes the reader from how we could go to work with the small forces who are for revolution today, all the way up to a situation where millions could be part of making a revolution and it could be launched. And while the whole piece resonates with a profound morality that comes from the goal of the emancipation of all of humanity, all of this is rooted in the scientific method and approach of the new communism that grounds not only our understanding, but our determination and our daring to make this a reality. And number four, if you are in New York City or you can get to New York, go to Revolution Books on August 4th, where I will be speaking on this new work by Bob Avakian. Then on the next day, August 5th, 2021, on the RNL Revolution Nothing Less show, we're going to show a film of this presentation. So right now, start organizing a watch party of that show on August 5th with your friends. So with this, we have a special program planned for today. We're going to show you Bob Avakian for the liberation of Black people and the emancipation of all humanity. You've seen segments of this article that we've animated, and we've brought in speeches from Bob Avakian to illustrate it, but we've put it all together in a single film. It's about 50 minutes. Watch it.
In September of 2020, Revcom.us published a very important article, Bob Avakian for the Liberation of Black People and the Emancipation of All Humanity. Bob Avakian, BA, is a revolutionary leader who has brought forward a whole new framework for the emancipation of all humanity, the new communism. Bob Avakian has analyzed that today we are living in a rare time when a real revolution is possible. And BA is leading the movement to get organized now for that revolution to overthrow this system of capitalism imperialism. This article brings alive a crucial part of who Bob Avakian is as a person and the work he has done on a pivotal question of this revolution, for which he has a great passion. The liberation of Black people and how this is bound together with the fight for the emancipation of all humanity. The RNL, Revolution Nothing Less Show, has narrated this article, adding images which include both recent and archival film footage of Bob Avakian as a contribution to telling this story. We present Bob Avakian for the liberation of Black people and the emancipation of all humanity. One of the things that comes through most powerfully in Bob Avakian's memoir is that a profound hatred for the oppression of Black people has been a defining part of Bob Avakian's life. From the time as a teenager, he learned about the lives of the Black people with whom he developed deep ties of friendship. Never feeling that because he is white, it is not his place to be involved in the struggle against this oppression, but on the contrary, determined to contribute whatever he could to this struggle, Bob Avakian, BA, from the time he worked closely with the Black Panther Party in its revolutionary days in the 1960s, has made the liberation of Black people a defining part of his life's commitment and work. As he developed as a revolutionary communist and emerged as the foremost revolutionary leader and thinker in the world, this commitment has become even deeper and has been strongly interwoven with a dedication to the emancipation of all humanity from every form of oppression and exploitation. Listen to Noche Diaz read what B.A. has written about his life's work.
Why was I doing the work I was doing? Once again, we're back to for whom and for what. I wasn't doing this work for myself. When I was young, in middle school, and then even more so in high school, my life got changed in a very major way by coming into contact with people that I hadn't really known that much before, in particular Black people. I started learning about their situation and how that relates to what goes on in this society as a whole. I was drawn to the culture, not just the music and art overall, but the whole way of going through the world of the Black people who became my friends and the world they introduced me to. And I came to the point of recognizing these are my people. Now, I knew they had a different life experience than I did, but these are my people. I don't see a separation. It's not like they are some other people over there who are going through all this and somehow that's removed from me. These are my people. And then I began to recognize more deeply what people were being put through. The oppression they were constantly subjected to, the horrors of daily life, as well as the bigger ways in which the system came down on them. And as I went further through life and began to approach the question of what needs to be done about this, and was introduced to taking up a scientific approach to this, I realized that my people were more than this. I realized that my people were Chicanos and other Latinos, and other oppressed people in the U.S., They were people in Vietnam and China. They were women. They were the oppressed and exploited of the world. And through some struggle and having to cast off some wrong thinking, I've learned that they are LGBT people as well. These are my people, the oppressed and exploited people of the world. They are suffering terribly, and something has to be done about this. So it is necessary to dig in and systematically take up the science that can show the way to put an end to all this and bring something much better into being. You have to persevere and keep struggling to go forward in this way. And when you run into new problems or setbacks, you have to go more deeply into this rather than putting it aside and giving up. But this is why I've been doing the work I've been doing.
Bob Avakian grew up in Berkeley, California. Unable, because of a life-threatening illness, to be directly involved in struggles taking place against racial oppression for several years after graduating from high school in 1961, B.A. nevertheless closely followed and strongly supported the civil rights movement in the early 1960s, and at the same time was influenced by and supportive of the militant stand and role of Malcolm X.
We declare our right on this earth to be a man, to be a human being, which we intend to bring into existence by any means necessary.
This was reflected in an article that B.A. wrote at the age of 19 in 1962, supporting the struggle of Black people. This article was submitted to the liberal magazine Saturday Review. Although the article was not published, the editor-in-chief of the magazine, Norman Cousins, personally replied, indicating that although the magazine had chosen not to publish the article, he recognized that the article spoke in a strikingly compelling way to very important questions. Having recovered from his illness in 1964, B.A. became actively involved in the free speech movement at the University of California in Berkeley, where he was a student. The central issue of this movement was the right of students to carry out activity on the campus in support of the civil rights movement.
The idea that the university could come out with regulations prohibiting civil rights activity when people were dying in the South.
There's a time when the operation of the machine becomes so odious, makes you so sick at heart that you can't take part. You can't even passively take part. And you've got to put your bodies upon the gears and upon the wheels, upon the levers, upon all the apparatus, and you've got to make it stop. And you've got to indicate to the people who run it, to the people who own it, that unless you're free, the machine will be prevented from working at all.
B.A. was among the 800 who were arrested during the occupation of the University Administration Building, which was the high point of the movement and led to winning its demands. As the civil rights movement increasingly gave way to a more militant Black liberation movement in the second half of the 1960s, B.A. was strongly influenced by this. He left the university and dedicated his life to working for radical change. As a result of direct contact and discussions with Huey Newton and Bobby Seale, the founders of the Black Panther Party, and getting to know Eldridge Cleaver, who also became a leader of the BPP, B.A. worked closely with the Black Panther Party from its earliest days and at the height of its revolutionary role and influence. In 1967, B.A. attended rallies and spoke at one of the rallies held by the BPP in North Richmond to protest the killing there of Denzel Dow, part of the long and continuing chain of murders of Black people by police. In 1968, when Huey Newton was facing murder charges as a result of a shootout with Oakland cops, B.A. spoke, along with a number of key figures in the Black liberation movement, including Stokely Carmichael, Rap Brown, James Foreman, and the leaders of the Black Panther Party, at a Free Huey rally held in the Oakland Auditorium on the occasion of Huey Newton's birthday.
I'm going to bring you on now a member of the Peace and Freedom Party who has worked diligently on behalf of Brother Huey. I give you Bob Avakian.
And I want to say that I wouldn't be on the stage, we wouldn't have been at the Oakland Induction Center if it weren't for the courageous people, the masses of people and the leaders who led and participated in the Black liberation struggle all these years. Because they're the ones that taught us. They're the ones that forced us to face what the reality of America and this system was all about. And in this sense, we say that not only are Black people a vanguard, but they're an inspiration. We don't expect them to liberate us. We have to do that for ourselves. But they have inspired us to begin that struggle to end this imperialist, racist, colonial system once and for all.
B.A. worked tirelessly to build support, including among white people, for the demand to free Huey. At a Free Huey rally at the courthouse in Oakland where Huey Newton's trial was being held, B.A. was arrested for desecrating, burning the American flag. During this time, at the invitation of BPP leaders, B.A. wrote a number of articles for the Black Panther newspaper. At a rally of thousands led by the Black Panther Party on May 1st, 1969, B.A. spoke of the need for revolution and called on white people in particular to more actively take part in movements for revolutionary change in the US and to support such movements throughout the world.
And let me say one thing to the white people in the audience. Now, you know, Bobby has been saying for a long time, we will not fight racism with racism. We refuse to stoop to the level of a racist to hate somebody because of the color of his skin. Well, that's fine. But I see a lot of white people walking around and say, oh, good. Now the Black Panther Party don't hate me. I can go on about my business. That's a cop-out, and if you act like that, the Black Panther Party will hate you, not because you're white, but because you ain't taking care of business to organize other people, teach them the need to support the Black Liberation Movement led by the Black Panther Party as a strong, fearless voice against American imperialism, and to link up with all the people in Vietnam, in China, in Angola, in Latin America, and everywhere else who are standing shoulder to shoulder to drive this vicious beast out of the way and out of the pages of history.
By the beginning of the 1970s, millions of people in this country were in favor of some kind of revolutionary change, but they faced profound challenges. How could this revolution be made? Or was it even possible to make a revolution here, up against such powerful forces of oppression and repression? Which were the key forces that had to be mobilized to have a real chance to carry out such a revolution? What kind of leadership was needed? And what methods and approaches should that leadership be based on? The difficulties in confronting and seeking the answers to these hard questions, combined with brutal and often murderous repression by the powers that be, led many revolutionary organizations, including the Black Panther Party, to split and end up departing from the road that could lead to real revolution. By this time, partly because of the influence of the Black Panther Party, which had popularized the Red Book of quotations from the Chinese Communist leader Mao Zedong, BA had become convinced not only that revolution was necessary and was possible, but it had to be led by a vanguard force that based itself on the scientific method and approach of communism, as it had been developed initially by Karl Marx, then further developed by Vladimir Lenin, the leader of the Russian Revolution in the early part of the 20th century, and then in turn further developed by Mao, who led the Chinese Revolution and the new socialist society in China until his death in 1976. BA led in the formation of the Revolutionary Union at the end of the 1960s, with the aim of working toward the establishment of the vanguard party of revolution, based on the science of communism. During the first part of the 1970s, BA was both the practical leader and the leading theoretician of the Revolutionary Union, writing much of the essays and polemics for its theoretical journal, Red Papers. This included major articles, particularly in Red Papers 5 and 6, that involved groundbreaking, scientific, materialist analysis of the situation of Black people, historically and down to the present. How and why their particular conditions of oppression had changed, from the time of slavery to the present era, and how this objectively put Black people in a potentially powerful position to be a driving force, not only for their own liberation, but for the communist revolution, whose fundamental aim is the abolition of all oppression and exploitation. These articles included powerful polemics, arguing against positions and programs that would not lead to, but would actually work against, this liberation and the revolutionary transformation of the world as a whole.
So when I went to prison, I started reading some of the literature. People started struggling with me in prison. People were struggling with me about, hey, if you really like serious, you got to read this. And the first thing they had me to read was Red Paper. I knew BA had wrote it. I had to read Red Paper 5 and 6. Because both of those were about the Black national question. I had to read it. And I had already read, I had studied, listened to Malcolm X. Malcolm X, all his recordings over and over. I had read Franz Fanon, Wretched of the Earth. I had read all the stuff from like the Panthers and the Panthers leaders and stuff about this. contradict this question, this black national question, and what's the solution? But when I read papers, I had to acknowledge I'd never seen this kind of approach, the kind of approach that he took to analyze from the time of slavery to what happened after slavery with Jim Crow to what was going on like now with, coming into the cities, into the proletariat and the implications of all that for revolution, that it was even black people being in even a more powerful position to contribute to revolution, communist revolution and stuff objectively. I had never read anything like that.
In 1975, with BA's leadership, the Revolutionary Communist Party was founded, with the aim of being the vanguard force for the revolution that was and continues to be profoundly necessary. Over the decades since then, BA has fought to keep that party on the revolutionary road and to bring forward new revolutionary forces to revitalize and strengthen the vanguard forces for the revolution that is now all the more urgently required. While continuing to provide practical guidance to the revolutionary forces, BA, through summing up the experience, positive and negative, of the communist movement, and drawing from a broad range of human experience, has brought forward a new synthesis of communism, also referred to as the New Communism, which most decisively has established communism on an even more consistently scientific basis. As BA's official biography explains, the New Communism is a continuation of, but also represents a qualitative leap beyond, and in some important ways a break with, communist theory as it had been previously developed. It provides the basis, the science, the strategy, and the leadership for an actual revolution and a radically new society on the road to real emancipation. A defining part of this new communism is the emphasis it gives to the struggle for the liberation of Black people and the relation of this to the ending of all oppression. And this has continued to stand out in BA's leadership role and work over the decades up to the present. At Revcom.us, there is a special section, Bob Avakian on the oppression of Black people and the revolutionary struggle to end all oppression, which contains clips from films and selections from the writings of BA on this question. The following are just a few examples of important works and leadership by Bob Avakian over the past few decades that speak to this decisive question. The book Reflections, Sketches, and Provocations, written by Bob Avakian during the 1980s, contains a number of commentaries speaking in a number of dimensions to the oppression of Black people and the struggle against this oppression, including support for rebellions following the murder of Black people by police.
A night of mayhem in Miami has been followed by a day of more tension and more trouble.
The violence broke out after a white male jury in Tampa found 4 white former Dade County policemen innocent in the death of Black Miami businessman Arthur McDuffie.
This book begins with the essay, Hill Street Bullshit, Richard Pryor Routines, and the Real Deal, which powerfully exposes how terror against Black people and other oppressed people is part of the job of the police.
I'm the police. I run shit here. You just live here.
And is a reward for carrying out the role of maintaining the law and order that keeps the oppressed in their desperate and miserable conditions.
To get another real look at what kind of society, what kind of system this is in the United States today, think about what happened to Amadou Diallo in New York. Now, Richard Pryor used to have this routine he did to show what it was like for a Black man just in an ordinary encounter with the police. How you had to try to avoid being one of those mistakes where you got killed. He talked about a Black man gets pulled over by the police and he has to say, I am reaching into my pocket for my license. Because I don't want to be no motherfucking accident.
I am reaching into my pocket for my license. Because I don't want to be no motherfucking accident.
You have to show them and make clear and loud that you're going into your pocket to bring out your wallet. Otherwise, they'll say you had a gun and shoot you down. And for Amadou Diallo, even that didn't work. Amadou Diallo pulled out his wallet and held it up, and they shot him down anyway. 41 times they shot at him. They pumped his body with bullets.
Going deeper, it speaks to how this is rooted in this system of capitalism imperialism, which has this oppression built into it from the very beginning. In the 1990s, BA raised the idea that there should be a day every year when people mobilize to protest police brutality, mass incarceration, and the repression by the government. This proposal was taken up in a broad coalition, including family members of people killed by police, was formed to initiate in 1996 the National Day of Protest to stop police brutality, repression, and the criminalization of a generation. At its height, over the next decade, this National Day of Protest, held every October 22nd, rallied thousands of people in dozens of cities across the country. And activities by people who have been part of this coalition have continued since then. During the past 2 decades, BA has given a number of filmed speeches and written articles, essays, and books in which the liberation of Black people and its crucial relation to the communist revolution, aiming for the emancipation of all humanity, has been a major question. BA's 2003 speech, Revolution, Why It's Necessary, Why It's Possible, What It's All About, begins with a searing exposure and condemnation of lynching.
In the ugly history of this country and all its horrors, selling postcards of the hanging, in particular, selling postcards of the lynchings of Black men, was literally a pastime, a kind of social activity in which all too many white people took part for 100 years and more, even after slavery was ended.
And speaks to the horrific reality of slavery and the oppression of Black people down to today, including the continual murder of Black people by police. In 2006, BA gave a series of 7 talks in which once again the oppression of Black people and the struggle for their liberation is a major theme.
Why we're in the situation we're in today and what to do about it. A thoroughly rotten system and the need for revolution. The NBA, marketing the minstrel show and serving the big gangsters.
One of these 7 talks, Communism and Jeffersonian Democracy, begins by speaking to the experience of Black people in this country. And the question of slavery and the overall oppression of Black people is, of course, a major part of this talk. It is in Communism and Jeffersonian Democracy that the following is clearly stated.
There would be no United States as we now know it today without slavery. That is a simple and basic truth.
This is also the very first statement and basics from the talks and writings of Bob Avakian, the Handbook for Revolution.
April 2011 saw the release of Basics, which is a book of quotations and essays from Bob Avakian. And to mark this event, artists and others came together in Harlem in a cultural celebration of revolution and the vision of a new world.
If you read Basics, you get the earnestness of what he's saying. You read it and go like, oh, this motherfucker's for real here. He's keeping it real. Because it's profound political principle that a second grader or somebody with a PhD could get with.
He came out with a book called Basics. I got it the other day. I'm reading it. One thing I want to say to young people, please get this book. When I was in the Black Panther Party, we used the Red Book as a means of uniting a whole community and uniting each other. To get that book, read it, organize, and bring about a revolution. We have to have a revolution in this country in order to save us and people all around the world.
At the beginning of BA Speaks, Revolution, Nothing Less, in 2012, this point is stated emphatically.
Let's start with just one great crime of this system. Police murder after murder after murder of black people and Latinos, especially youth.
This is part of the powerful exposure in this speech of the role that continuing murders by police play in enforcing this monstrous system of exploitation and oppression, the system of capitalism imperialism.
We are confronted by, we are now being ruled by a fascist regime, relentlessly assaulting civil rights and liberties and openly promoting bigotry and inequality.
At the beginning of his October 2017 speech, "The Trump-Pence regime must go. In the name of humanity, we refuse to accept a fascist America. A better world is possible," BA speaks powerfully to the horrors of slavery in this country, including the rape by slave masters of huge numbers of enslaved women.
Did you know that the Constitution adopted by the founders of this country institutionalized the right of men to rape at will? I had thought of beginning this talk with that statement. And then, in response to the gasp of shock and disbelief that such a statement should call forth, I could have said, no, the Constitution didn't actually do that. But it did something no less horrific, institutionalizing the enslavement of millions of people. In fact, however, the Constitution adopted by the founders did legalize mass rape. Besides enshrining property relations in which men could legally rape their wives, the Constitution, by explicitly codifying the status of slaves as property, in effect established the right of the slave owners to do anything they wished to their slaves, including raping the women. And slave women were raped regularly and repeatedly by their owners and overseers.
This speech shows how the murderous oppression of black people, continuing down to today, is one of the main roots of the fascism that has come to power in this country with the Trump-Pence regime. And in this speech, BA repeatedly returns to the critical importance of the fight against this oppression. BA's 2018 speech, Why We Need an Actual Revolution and How We Can Really Make Revolution, begins this way.
In 2012, in Revolution Nothing Less, I talked about the outrageous murder of Ramarley Graham earlier that same year, shot down in his own house in the Bronx by the New York City police. He was only 18 years old. Do I have to tell you what race he was? His mother kept saying, "This has to stop." And his father repeated over and over, "Why did they kill my son? Why did they kill my son?" New York cops then loudly rallied around their fellow pig who murdered Ramarley in cold blood, viciously taunting Ramarley's family and loved ones, demonstrating yet one more time the ugly truth that in the way this country has been built, and for the powers that be in this country, the humanity of black people has never counted for anything. They have never been valued as human beings, but only as things to be exploited, oppressed, and repressed. 6 years later, and with cold-blooded murders by police, continuing in an unbroken chain, I will say again now what I said then. How many more times does this have to happen? How many more times do the tears and the cries of anguish and anger have to pour forth from the wounded hearts of people? How many more times, when another of these outrageous murders is perpetrated by the police, do we have to hear those words that pour gasoline on the already burning wounds? Justifiable homicide, justified use of force by police. How many more?
In that 2018 speech, BA not only powerfully exposes once again the horrific oppression that this system of capitalism, imperialism inflicts on Black people and on other oppressed people in this country and throughout the world, and the grave danger this system poses to the very future of humanity.
White supremacy, male supremacy, wars of empire, the demonization, criminalization, and deportations of immigrants, the destruction of the planet. Why is this the state of humanity? There is one fundamental reason. The basic nature of the system of capitalism, imperialism that we live under, and the way, because of its very nature, it continually perpetrates and perpetuates horror after horror. And in fundamental terms, we have two choices. Either live with all this and condemn future generations to the same, or worse, if they have a future at all, or make revolution.
He also lays out in this speech and in a more recent article, a real revolution, a real chance to win, further developing the strategy for revolution, the strategic approach that could make it possible for this system to be finally overthrown through a revolution in which millions and millions of people are led to fight to put an end to this system and bring a radically different and much better system into being. In the Constitution for the New Socialist Republic in North America, authored by BA, a sweeping vision and a concrete blueprint for that radically different and much better system is set forth. And the principles and means for finally putting an end, at long last, to the oppression of Black people is a major part of that Constitution. This year, 2020, BA has written as many as 30 articles in which this decisive question, the oppression and the struggle for the liberation of Black people, is a recurring subject.
Why is this terror and murder necessary for this system in order to ensure its order and its ongoing functioning? The answer is that from the beginning of this country, white supremacy has been poured into the foundation and built into the institutions and the ongoing functioning of this system. Specifically with regard to Black people, the centuries of oppression they have suffered, from slavery days to the days of Jim Crow segregation and Ku Klux Klan terror, to the present time with the continuing systematic discrimination against Black people in every part of society, employment, housing, education, health care, and on and on. All of this has resulted in a situation where masses of black people today, and in particular youth, have been robbed of a means for a decent life, with many maintained in conditions of desperate poverty and deprivation.
In the speeches and writings of B.A. overall, there is not only powerful, penetrating exposure and uncompromising condemnation of brutal and murderous oppression, but even more importantly, there is scientific analysis of how all this is rooted in this system of capitalism imperialism, and of the need, the possibility, and the means for making revolution to overthrow this system and finally put an end to all the outrageous and unnecessary suffering that the masses of humanity are continually subjected to under this system.
White supremacy and capitalism. They have been completely interwoven and tightly stitched together through the whole development of this country down to today. To attempt to really put an end to white supremacy while maintaining the system of capitalism would tear the entire fabric of the country apart. White supremacy and capitalism. It is not possible to overcome and finally abolish the one without overthrowing and finally abolishing the other.
It is a very precious thing for the oppressed of the earth when they have a leader whose life is dedicated to their emancipation and who has the determination and the scientific method developed over decades to point the way and continue to carve out the path to achieving that emancipation. B.A. is such a leader.
But 200 of us volunteered to go to D.C. to turn it upside down politically, to defend Bob Avakian, the Mao Zedong defenders. And I had we had a talk, he just came up and he approached me. Here he is, he's a world-class leader. He just came up and approached me, and he started talking to me about some of the things that we were studying at that time, which we were studying about how the second Communist International, how it collapsed in the face of big challenges, which was World War I at that time. And it was only Lenin who led, the masses, to fight in the interest of humanity and stuff, and to make revolution, while everybody else leading they gave up on revolution and led the masses, in the different countries to fight each other in defense of the fucking imperialist fatherland and shit like this here. And he was just talking to me about that and some of the lessons that we should draw and stuff like that. But he was so genuine, so down to earth. And we was just talking. It was like when you're talking to him, it was like talking to your best friend. That's what always struck me about B.A., That's what it struck me for whenever I've, engaged him and stuff, whether that was through writing or whether that's through talking to him directly and stuff. That's what's always struck me. And the other thing that's always struck me about B.A., it's always getting to the heart, getting to the root of what the problem is. And that's the only way you can get to what the real solution is. You got to get to the heart. You got to get to the root of where it all stems from and stuff. And he's developed a method and approach that enables him and enables you, enables everybody else who take that up to be able to do that and stuff. So we can bring about the revolution to emancipate humanity.
As emphasized in the article, Bob Avakian, a radically different leader, a whole new framework for human emancipation. As a revolutionary leader, B.A. also embodies this rare combination, someone who has been able to develop scientific theory on a world-class level, while at the same time having a deep understanding of and visceral connection with the most oppressed, and a highly developed ability to break down complex theory and make it broadly accessible.
If you want to eliminate a problem or an evil, you must get to the root of it. If you want to eliminate the oppression and miserable conditions of the masses of people in the world today, you have to dig down to the underlying foundation. the ground in which this oppression and misery is rooted, and which continually gives rise to this oppression and suffering. You cannot get rid of a poisonous plant and create something healthy in its place just by pulling up the top of the plant. You have to pull it up from the roots and then grow something completely different and change the soil too. That is what a radical solution is. Radical means having to do with the root. And this is why a real revolution is needed, and this is what it's all about.
One of the things that most distinguishes Bob Avakian's role as a revolutionary leader is his willingness, indeed his insistence, on telling people the truth, even when they may not want to hear it. This comes through in the way BA exposes and refutes unscientific ways of thinking, all kinds of conspiracy theories.
So again, we were not bound to end up where we are today. This was not the result of any master plan, any innate and unchangeable human nature, or of any secret conspiracy. It wasn't the Illuminati that plotted it all out and made it all happen.
And superstitious ideas.
There is no transcendent will or agent. This means it refers back to the fact that there's no God out there with a master plan moving and shaping everything according to this plan. And also, for the New Age people who like to have their own substitute for religion, there's no universe out there shaping and determining things either. I know a lot of these people like to say, I think the universe is talking to me. Well, I have bad news for you. The universe doesn't give a fuck about you.
That lead people, including the most bitterly oppressed people, away from understanding the world as it actually is, and keep them from seeing not just the need, but the possibility of radically changing the world in a way that would lead to ending oppression. A big problem that BA has taken on, straight up, is the role of religion as a mental chain on the masses of Black people and other oppressed people, and the need to break this chain in order to most powerfully wage the struggle to finally be free of all oppression.
Now the truth is, there is no Lord, and we do not need, nor should we want or accept any lords and masters, imaginary ones or real ones, lording it over us. Some say this is all God's will. No, it is not. And it does great injury to those suffering so terribly and so unnecessarily in this world to tell them that this is God's will, or a test that this supposed God has set before them, to endure horrible oppression in this world with the promise of a better life in some other world, some afterlife which is not real and will never come.
BA has repeatedly emphasized that in order to end oppression, you have to want revolution badly enough to be scientific about it. Science means judging whether something is true or not by whether there is evidence that it actually corresponds to reality, and not believing something because it makes you feel good to believe it, or not refusing to believe something because it makes you uncomfortable. In the article, Conspiracy Theories, Fascist Certitude, Liberal Paralysis, or a Scientific Approach to Changing the World, BA has spoken directly to this problem.
Many of the basic masses who are bitterly oppressed under this system also are suspicious of and even are inclined to reject science and scientifically grounded analysis. But this also leaves you vulnerable to all kinds of unfounded conspiracy theories.
If you have a flu-like symptom, do not take any vaccines. I'm telling you this now, and this is from the Lord.
And other wrong and harmful ideas, including the notion that nothing people do will make a difference because it's all in God's hands.
In the 2014 dialogue with Cornel West, Revolution and Religion, The Fight for Emancipation and the Role of Religion, which took place during the upsurge of protest and rebellion in response to the murder of Mike Brown in Ferguson, Missouri.
Fight back! Fight back! Fight back! Fight back! Fight back! Fight back! Fight back!
While speaking to the importance of uniting people broadly in the struggle against oppression, including people who hold religious views, BA also emphasized that the revolution that is needed to finally put an end to oppression must be led with a scientific, not a religious, outlook and method.
We need to understand things as they actually are and as they actually could be. We need a scientific method and approach to life and to our struggle. Now, let's stop right there. Oh, science. Either that's something mysterious that only a few weird people can possibly understand, or it's something frightening that we got to keep away from. Science, when it's done the way it's supposed to be, simply means learning about reality and changing it by investigating it, accumulating evidence by interacting with reality, identifying the patterns in reality, and then moving to change it on that basis. That's all science is, not something more mysterious or frightening. This is a way humanity has learned. This is a way, for example, we've been able to identify and develop cures for many diseases.
From the start of the article, Bob Avakian on Emancipation from Mental Slavery and All Oppression, written last year, 2020, BA does not hold back in speaking to these critical questions.
In 1863, midway in the Civil War, Abraham Lincoln finally issued the Emancipation Proclamation. And as a result of the Civil War, black people were formally freed from literal physical slavery. But today the question is, when and how will black people finally be free from all forms of slavery and oppression? And this poses straight up this big question. When will black people finally emancipate themselves from the mental slavery of religion? Once more, the question is sharply posed. How can black people be finally and fully emancipated from centuries of oppression? And how does this relate to ending all oppression of all people everywhere? The answer is that the possibility of this is real, but it can happen only on the basis of a scientific approach to changing the world and the scientifically grounded understanding that this oppression is rooted in and caused by the system of capitalism imperialism, the same system that is viciously exploiting and murderously oppressing people not just in this country, but all over the world, and is plundering the natural environment. And that this system must and can be overthrown through an actual revolution and replaced by a radically different and far better system, socialism, whose final goal is a communist world without any oppression or exploitation of anyone, anywhere.
From his early years forging close personal ties with black people and increasingly learning about their lived experience, to his development as this rare leader who has brought forth the most advanced, scientific, revolutionary theory with the new communism, a defining part of the life and work of Bob Avakian has been the liberation of black people from centuries of oppression, and the understanding of how this relates to, and is a crucial driving force in, the communist revolution to finally abolish every form of oppression and exploitation everywhere. B.A. himself has expressed this in the following poetically powerful statement.
There is the potential for something of unprecedented beauty to arise out of unspeakable ugliness. Black people playing a crucial role in putting an end, at long last, to this system which has, for so long, not just exploited, but dehumanized, terrorized, and tormented them in 1,000 ways. Putting an end to this in the only way it can be done, by fighting to emancipate humanity, to put an end to the long night in which human society has been divided into masters and slaves, and the masses of humanity have been lashed, beaten, raped, slaughtered, shackled, and shrouded in ignorance and misery.
Before we close out our episode today, I want to take just a moment to thank and celebrate everybody who tuned in and donated to and who went out to others and raised money from them for the Revolution Tour as part of the fundraiser that we're in the middle of right now for the Get Organized for an Actual Revolution Tour, and for everybody who tuned in to the live stream that we hosted here on our channel last weekend. We got together over halfway to our goal, and that's really important. But it is very necessary that we make it all the way to our $25,000 goal very soon. And this is just the bare minimum to keep this tour going, keep this show going. And we need to raise much more than that to spread this revolution far and wide and seize on this rare moment. So I want to urge you, if you missed it, go back and watch the live stream. It's on our channel, and learn more about the work of the tour. If you donated before and can give again, please do so. If you haven't yet, please take the time right now and make a donation to this tour. And all of us, let's go out to the people that we know, and let's use this fundraiser as a chance to go out to people we don't know and to talk to them about this revolution and further spread this revolution, whether it's through hosting a house party where you watch the Revolution Nothing Less show and ask your friends to help donate, whether you set up a table at the farmer's market, whether you do a yard sale or a bake sale, or take the revolutionary chain jars out to your neighbors and friends, however you can be part of raising money, please do so, and let's meet this goal together. So with that, I want to say on behalf of myself, Andy Z, and the whole crew here at the RNL Show, good night, and we will see you next week.